So I ended up dropping Sun Ken Rock after 50 chapters, and I'm going to talk about it, but I'm also warning you that there are spoilers for the first 50 chapters, just so you know. 50 chapters in is as far as I got. That's how much I'll be discussing. I don't know the ending, and honestly, I don't really care. So Sun Ken Rock is made by a mangaka by the name of Boichi. I think I said that right. From my understanding, he is Korean, and he is also the mangaka that does the now famous Dr. Stone. So the art style will seem pretty similar. And honestly, this guy has some amazing art. He also does comedy art really well, which is a part of Sun Ken Rock. But in the details of the characters' faces and bodies and the background's not so much, but when the characters are in a fight and it's a very serious moment, oh my god, does this mangaka know how to make detailed characters. So a basic summary just to help us get started. You have our character named Ken, right? He likes this girl named Yumi. So he confesses to Yumi. Yumi says, actually, I'm Korean, and I'm going to Korea to become a cop. And so she leaves. Ken is like, I'll follow her. Ken goes to Korea. He spends like a year basically doing nothing. And then he eventually meets Yumi. And Yumi actually is a cop. And so Ken realizes that he's just a loser in Korea. And he becomes a Sun Ken Rock. All the pun is in the title. Either way, Ken is having a nice meal thanks to this stall vendor, and unfortunately the stall vendor gets shaken down for protection money by this other gang, and Ken decides to step in, showing that he's a real fighter, and hence we are introduced to our, I guess, secondary protagonist, you can call him, Tae-so, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, forgive me, it's Korean, but Tae-so sees Ken, and he's basically like, that guy is going to be a great leader. And so he basically makes him the leader of the gang after seeing his skills. And Tae-so really is like a mastermind that pulls all the strings. You see later on in the manga that he has kind of been orchestrating this whole thing, but we'll get to that. Either way, Ken becomes the boss of his new gang, and he finds out that Yumi hates gang members. She absolutely hates criminals, and she absolutely hates gangs. Ken decides that he needs to have a front, so then that way Yumi doesn't suspect that he is a gangster. So he takes over this old video game development studio. And so then Ken basically acts like he owns a video game making company, a studio if you will, and Yumi is, I wouldn't really say impressed, but I guess it serves its purpose. But the first major conflict we get is with this cafe. There's this cafe that Tae-so and his other gang members all go to, and so Ken joins them. He meets this waitress. She's sort of like an important side character for a little bit. Either way, the cafe gets attacked by some gangsters, the waitress gets abducted, and honestly, it was pretty damn brutal. Like, this is really where it gets pretty 18 plus, is with this conflict. The things that the enemy gang does to the waitress is truly just appalling, I guess you could say. And it had me hooked. I'll be honest. It made me realize like this series is not going to pull its punches with how powerful and just atrocious the underground criminal world is in Korea. And so basically that happens. I won't spoil it because I really do want you to read that scene in particular, because that's kind of what hooked me, is that after that happened I was like, oh, this is definitely going to be a really good series. Either way, they end up saving the waitress, but Ken runs into this guy. I'm blanking on his name. I believe his name is Kim, right? Something like that. Either way, he runs into this guy who just completely annihilates him, and Ken realizes that he has to go do training And there's a mini training arc. There's this mini training arc, and we gain a new member to the gang who's like a weapons specialist. But this is where I gotta kind of not really bash the manga here. Like, I get it. Fan service is just a part of manga at this point. But this one really takes it it's a little weird, because you have this scene where a character is very like brutally assaulted, and like it's some really like messed up stuff. And then later on you have this other female character who is basically just like a fan service character. For whatever reason, this manga just loves having low angles on females. It also loves putting females in very helpless situations, I guess you could say. And it's not really helping the narrative. In the cafe conflict, I guess I'll call it that. I don't know if it has an arc title, but in the cafe conflict, it made sense because it was something that could actually happen. But later on in the manga, it just comes off as fan service for the sake of a manga. And then Yumi, the police woman, who they try really hard to show that like she doesn't need help. She's a policewoman. She has martial arts training. It is also revealed, major spoilers again, major spoilers. It also revealed that her dad was a Yakuza boss, one of the most powerful Yakuza bosses, and they were actually going to spread to Korea, but she ended up leaving to Korea and betraying him. But like whenever she's in a fight scene, like she has to fight her bodyguard. It's just like, why do you need to constantly show her underwear? Why do you constantly need to have her clothes get ripped apart and show her breast? And it's just kind of like, it's a little gross sometimes, where it's like, this is like a really serious moment where a character's fighting and you show her panties. It's just kind of like, what are you doing? And there's also later on, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, I'll come back, but later on there's this Rome. They go to Rome. There's this Romanian guy, Italian guy, I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention, forgive me, but he basically, his whole character is like a comedic relief character where he has a really big what's the word I could use here? Really big genitalia, I guess you could say, but he's a quick shot. And the joke is that he constantly tries to sexually harass all the women in Ken's life, and it's kind of like that. It's just weird. It just feels weird, and it feels icky. It's kind of just like, why are you doing that? I guess it's supposed to add to the comedy, but I just didn't really find it comedic. I don't know. By the way, let's backtrack. Basically, after the cafe fight, there is a casino fight, and this is where you learn a bit more about Teiso. It turns out his dad actually owned a casino, and so he's sort of like redeeming his father, because Teiso comes from, I guess, like a pretty well-known criminal family in Korea, but I guess they must have fallen from grace, and so he's trying to redeem them in using Ken, because he knows that he can use Ken. I don't know, maybe it would have explained later on in the manga, but I just really lost interest. The casino fights were okay, but the problem is that after the cafe conflict, the series kind of took a turn where it became a bit more comedic and fan servicey rather than like a brutal drama / action of the criminal underworld of Korea. Like, it started becoming more just about like Ken simping for Yumi constantly getting harassed and her clothes ripped apart, and it just didn't sit well with me. I really kind of didn't like it. The art didn't take any drops. The art was still really good, but the amount of etchiness in this series really ruined it for me, because like the first like 20ish chapters, I want to say, whenever the cafe stuff is happening, was like really brutal, and like, this makes me interested in this kind of series. And then it kind of devolved into like comedy relief, fan service, and losing that like brutal edge. Like there were still really cool fights, but they felt more like shonen fights than like seinen fights. And this is really more of a seinen. There is a lot. Let me tell you, there is a lot of things in this that I guess younger people shouldn't, see. So that's basically why I dropped Sun Ken Rock. Maybe I would be interested in knowing the ending, but to be honest, I can't sit through another 130 chapters. It's about 180 chapters, though some of them are those like extra chapters. I think it's like 170 in actual chapters. But I really have no interest at this point. It has really good art. I would give it that. If I had to put it in the Rambling Brother collection, I would say it is a at your own risk. And as you may know, at your own risk basically means that it's not good, it's not bad, it's more so just in the middle.